Room for error does more than just widen the target around when you think might happen. It also helps protect you from things you would never imagine, which can be the most troublesome events we face. The Battle of Stalingrad during World War II was the largest battle in history when it came equally staggering stories of how people dealt with risk. One came in late 1942 when a German tank unit sat in reserve on grasslands outside the city. When tanks were desperately needed on the front lines, something happened that surprised everyone. Almost none of them worked. Out of 104 tanks in the unit, fewer than 20 were operable. Engineers quickly found the issue. Historian William Craig writes, during the weeks of inactivity behind the front lines, field mice had nested inside the vehicles and eaten away insulation covering the electrical systems. The Germans had the most sophisticated equipment in the world, yet there they were, defeated by mice. You can imagine their disbelief. This almost certainly never crossed their minds. What kind of tank designer thinks about mice protection? Not a reasonable one, and not one who studied tank history. But these kinds of things happen all the time. You can plan for every risk except the things that are too crazy to cross your mind. And those crazy events can do the most harm because they happen more often than you think and you have no plan for how to deal with them. In 2006, Warren Buffett announced a search for his eventual replacement. He said he needed someone genetically programmed to recognize and avoid serious risks, including those never before encountered. I have seen this skill at work with startups my firm. My firm Collaborative Fund has backed. Ask a founder to list the biggest risk they face, and the usual suspects are mentioned. But beyond the predictable struggles of running a startup, here are a few issues we've dealt with among our portfolio companies. Water pipes broke, flooding and ruining a company's office. A company's office was broken into 3 times. A company was kicked out of its manufacturing plant. A store was shut down after a customer called the health department because she didn't like that another customer bought a dog inside. A CEO's email was spoofed in the middle of a fundraise that required all of his attention. A founder had a mental breakdown. Several of these events were existential to the company's future, but none of them were foreseeable because none had previously happened to the CEOs dealing with these problems or anyone else they knew, for that matter. It was uncharted territory. Avoiding these kinds of unknown risks is almost by definition impossible. You can't prepare for what you can't envision. If there's one way to guard against their damage, it's avoiding single points of failure. A good rule of thumb for a lot of things in life is that everything that can break will eventually break. So if many things rely on one thing working and that thing breaks, you are counting the days to catastrophe. That's a single point of failure. Some people are remarkably good at avoiding single points of failure. Most critical systems on airplanes have backups, and the backups often have backups. Modern jets have 4 redundant electrical systems. You can fly with one engine and technically land with none, as every jet must be capable of stopping on a runway with its brakes alone, without thrust reverse from its engines. Suspension bridges can similarly lose many of their cables without falling. The biggest single point of failure with money is a sole reliance on a paycheck to fund short-term spending needs, with no savings to create a gap between what you think your expenses are and what they might be in the future. The trick that often goes overlooked even by the wealthiest is what we saw in chapter 10, realizing that you don't need a specific reason to save. It's fine to save for a car or a home or for retirement, but it's equally important to save for things you can't possibly predict or even comprehend the financial equivalent of field mice. Predicting what you'll use your savings for assumes you live in a world where you know exactly what your future expenses will be, which no one does. I save a lot and I have no idea what I'll use the savings for in the future. Few financial plans that only prepare for known risks have enough margin of safety to survive the real world. In fact, the most important part of every plan is planning on your plan not going according to the plan. Now let me show you how this applies to you.